All right. Um, I'll start by asking if you want to just type in the chat, or do you want to call out a question on the practice test that you would like me to answer, or any concepts you want me to explain? All right. All right. 18 and 21. Let's get those and then we'll do some more after. 18. All right. All right. Let me get my copy here. I can see it better. 18. All right. Assume with a proportional tax system, the government always sets a tax rate at the level that yields a balanced budget at full employment. Okay. So what they're saying here, Matt, is say they're saying 10% is the 10% of income is being taxed. Well, they're basing that on hitting the potential output, the LRAS. So if income is less, because the answer is the national debt will increase in any year the economy operates below. If income is less than full employment, they're taking 10% of that income, which is less, and that's not going to hit the balanced budget. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And the next one was 21. Um, if an international value of the US dollar depreciates in comparison with the Japanese yen. Okay. So if the dollar depreciates, it makes our goods look cheaper. So Japanese people will buy them because the goods seem cheaper. So US exports will increase. Does that make sense to you, David?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anyone else want to type in any question that they would like me to go over?
So you said if the dollar depreciates, our goods depreciate?
No, if the dollar depreciates, and Matt, I'll go to 28 in a second, and then I'll get 37. If the dollar depreciates, KG, it makes our goods appear cheaper because it takes less yen to buy something. So
Okay.
therefore, it's like price levels going down. The people from Japan are going to buy more U.S. goods because they appear to be cheaper.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Then we'll go to 28 and 37. All right. 28. Which of the following would directly increase the capital stock? So capital stock is like anything in business investment. So a business firm expands so it builds more facilities, it builds more factories. That's what would improve capital stock. Jack, the answer sheet is on the AP review. I think it says macro practice test answer sheet. Did that make sense to you, Matt?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The next one we're going to is 37. All right. Roll down. There's a little flip curve there. 37. An increase in inflationary expectations will most likely affect nominal interest rates and bond prices. All right. So if we're expecting inflation, that means price levels are going to go up. So therefore, the demand of money will increase, which would get nominal interest rates to increase. If nominal interest rates increase, interest rates have to decrease, and that's why it's B as in broccoli. David, does that make sense?
So if there's an increase in inflation or like just expectations alone, that increases price level.
Yeah, well, truthfully, inflationary expectations is going to shift SRAS left, which would put price levels up.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on this practice test that people would like me to go over? Yeah, Ryan, bond prices have an inverse relationship to interest rates. So anything that increases interest rates will decrease bond prices and vice versa.
All right,
Does that
great.
make
Thank
sense
you.
to you?
Yeah, makes sense now.
Okay. David, I'll get to 46 and 53 in a second. Jack, the velocity of money. I think it's basically just knowing the formula, which is M, money supply, times V velocity equals P price level times Y output. So M money supply times V velocity equals P price level times Y output. Now, P times Y is nominal GDP. Okay. And then velocity of money really is theoretically, if you spend $1, how long it takes to get back to you. But, does that make sense to you, the formula? Okay. All right. 46. By the way, you won't have questions and answers will be on the same page tomorrow. I mean, in itself should be exciting. The table above indicates the production alternatives of two country A and B, which produce computers and steel. Okay, so it's an output because it's how many computers and how many steel, right? If both countries always produce at full, which of the following is true? Okay, I'll get to 32nd in a second. Right. So I'm going to just do everything here in a way. Country A has the absolute advantage in computers and also in steel, 180, and steel 120, and you can have the advantage in both. All right, let's see, can I get this thing? Trying to, maybe this is this way. Just trying to use the pen here for a second. All right, so so the other country A is steel over computers. So it's 100 over 100, which is 1. And then the other for country B is steel is 80 over 20 is 4. So I know country A, the comparative advantage in computers, and country B has it in steel. All right. So mutual advantage between the two countries when 1 unit of steel, country A, is exchanged for computers. Well, country A isn't going to trade, they don't have the comparative advantage in steel, so that doesn't seem. A mutually advantage trade could occur when two countries, when 2 units of steel for country B are exchanged for right. So country A with no trade trades 1 computer for 1 steel. It's a 1-to-1 relation. So now if I'm looking at question B, country A will get 2 steels for 1. That's good for country A. Now, country B usually has to give up 4 steels for 1 computer. Now they're only giving up 2 steels for 1 computer. So that's good for them. So the answer is B as in broccoli. And I would say anytime like 100 over 100 is 1-to-1, and 80 over 20 relationship is 1-to-4. Anything in between those is going to be a good trade. And the answer there is B. Okay. Now I gotta get the chat back up so I could. Right. Dave, does that make sense to you?
It does. Thank you.
All right. Now let's see. Could I scroll down to 53 and then I'll get Patrick. I'll get you at 32nd. All right. Each of the following will lower the prices of a country's outstanding government bonds. Okay. So which of the following will lower the price of a country's outstanding government bonds? An outflow of financial capital. So if financial capital is flowing out of our country, we're going to be demanding, say, Japanese bonds, which is going to increase their value and decrease ours because you can either buy one or the other. So when you have an outflow of financial capital, that means you're either buying direct portfolio of another country, and or their bonds. So that's why C, as in Caroline, would be the answer. I think that's a really hard question. I also could say if you have an outflow of financial capital, that means you would have you would then have, if you're having an outflow of, you're going to have net exports, you're going to have a current account surplus. And if net exports increases, AD increases, price level increases, interest rates increase. So that would also lower prices of government bonds. But I would say you have a choice here. So if you have the easiest way to do this, I think, is if you have an outflow of financial capital, all right, that means your country is buying other people's bonds. So therefore, the demand for your bonds will decrease.
That makes a lot more sense. Thank
Okay,
you.
that was okay. I'm glad it made sense to you because I thought I did a horrible job. As long as it makes sense to you. 36. Which of the following can be concluded from the data above? I love these. Not really, because they're like so. All right. If nominal GDP goes up 50 billion and real GDP only goes up 20 billion. So that means we made 20 billion more of products, but we increased by 50 billion. So that has to be inflation. And then the same thing happened in year 2 and 3, because we increased by 30 billion and we only increased 10 billion by more products. So the answer is the economy. No, the economy was experiencing inflation in 2 and 3, and that's anytime nominal increases more than real, Ryan, you have inflation. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for
Okay.
going over that.
Yeah, anytime nominal increases more than real. All right. Any other questions people have? 13. Yes, Ellen. Let me see. Could I backtrack? Let me see. I'm gonna get rid of this for a second. The chat. I'm gonna try to erase this thing because it's getting a little annoying. Erase that. Kind of like I erased my board. Not very well. All right. I'm gonna scroll up to 15. I think. Okay. Let me find it on my paper here. If producing each additional unit of good X required giving up all right, so we have increasing cost. And anytime you have increasing cost, you have a bowed out curve, right? So it's increasing, that's just, it's increasing cost. It's going to be a bowed out curve, kind of like this. Okay. And if it's constant cost, you're going to have a curve like that. Now, good time for me to go over this. You're in the middle here, you have unemployment and recession. You need a shifter to get to the curve on B? No. What would get the curve from A to B is lower unemployment or full employment there. Now, if this is capital goods and this is consumer, you want to make more capital goods for long run economic growth. The only time shifters are come in is if you're trying to get to point C outside the curve. I'll get the chat back up. All right, Owen, I'll go to 4 and 59 in a second. Owen, did that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to make sense. All right, let's see, could I get 4? Where is 4? Okay. 4. An increase in which of the following would most likely cause gross domestic product of a country to decrease in the short run? All right. So if I'm looking at the short run, Jack, I'm looking for AD to go to the left, and an increase in imports would shift AD to the left because one of the shifters is net exports, exports minus imports. So that would shift AD left. Did that make sense? No problem. That's why we're going over it. All right, 59. Let's see, could I get all the way down to 59? These are usually the hardest. Whoops. All right, let me mine because I can't read off the computer. So let me get the printed copy. All right, if a country has a deficit in its current account, there will be a surplus in the financial. It's A. Matt, there's the current plus the surplus, the current plus the financial has to equal to 0. So if the current has a deficit, financial has to have a surplus. Does that make sense to you?
Could you repeat that again? It was the current plus what?
Yeah. The current plus the financial has to equal 0. So if the current has a deficit, the financial has to have a surplus.
Got it. Thank you.
And then a whenever, so like if the financial has a surplus, capital has to be flowing into that country. Okay? All right. And then Mac wants me to go over what makes up the current and financial. So, and then KG, I'll answer your question too. So the current account, Matt, is net exports, export minus imports, net investment, which is investments, money you make off your foreign investments. So if I own a company in Japan, the money I made off that. If I own Japanese stock, the money I made off it. And then net transfers, which is any money that leaves the country and you don't get something for. So you send your great grandmother in Australia money. The United States gives foreign aid to Israel. Those are net transfers. The financial account is made up of 2 major things: direct investment, which is me owning a foreign business or a foreign factory, or portfolio investment, me owning foreign stocks or bonds. Okay? The difference, KG, is the current account is really it's really about net exports, to be honest. It's about trade. And the financial account is more about ownership of either stocks or businesses. But when the current is in a surplus, the financial has to be in a deficit. Mac and KG, did that clarify it for you too?
Yeah.
Mr. Bressler, so what's the difference between like net investments and direct investment?
Net investment, Mac, is I made $10,000 this year owning my McDonald's in Japan. Direct investment is I spent $2 million building that McDonald's in Japan.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anyone else with any other questions? I am going, if no one has questions, I'm going to check the slide I had of terms to see, is there anything I thought I should go over? So let me just bring that up. Okay, kind of talked about this. I just wanted to make people realize X is like, it could be a recession. It's inefficient. A, B, and C are equally efficient. Okay. The only time you'd prefer A is if it's capital goods and you're looking about economic growth. You go from X to A or X to B or X to C, not by shifting, not by any of the four shifters, but by being more efficient, by like lowering unemployment or getting more people to work. Now, to go to Y, anytime you go to Y, you have economic growth. All right. And when they say economic growth, they're thinking long term. When you see economic growth, think of the four shifters. Think change in quantity or quality of resources, change in human resources, change in capital stock, and change in technology. All right. Now, okay, there were some things. Ryan, hold on to 42. Jack was thinking that it's consumer goods and capital goods, but let me just check. Oh, no, A1B, thought it was capital goods. I was blocked up in the chat box. A would not be better for economic growth then. It'd only be better if it was capital goods. My mistake. Ryan, I'll get to 42. Let me just look at, yes. All right, limited reserves. That is, half money supply. Just remember ROD, reserve requirement, open market operations discount rate. Now, how do I fix an inflationary gap? I want AD to go left. Sell suck, raise the discount rate, raise the reserve requirement. How do I fix a recessionary gap? Buy boom, lower the discount rate, lower the reserve requirement. Now, the discount rate is like an interest rate. So we know lower the interest rate, investment goes up, AD right. If you lower the discount rate, you lower the reserve requirement. I just want to say fiscal policy, government spending, taxes, and transfer payments. Government spending, taxes, and transfer payments. All right, the spending multiplier, 1 over 1 minus MPC, 1 over 1 minus MPC. The money multiplier, 1 over the reserve requirement. The tax multiplier, 1 minus the spending multiplier. All right. Remember, if I make $1,000 deposit, you have to put the reserve ratio and required reserves and the rest in excess. When you buy a bond, nothing goes into required reserves. It all goes into excess. Cost push inflation and stagflation are the same thing. That's a leftward supply shift. Crowding out is government spends, AD to the right. Then you go to the loanable funds market. The demand curve is government spending and investment. Demand shifts right, interest rates up, investment down, and investment pulls back the original AD shift. And then just remember, if government increases spending by 100 and they increase taxes by 100, government spending is going to increase because the multiplier is bigger. So cost push inflation, crowding out, and government spending, I think there's always a question, one question at least on each of those. The deposit versus buying bonds, I think this, I don't know, I didn't count on the practice test, but I'm sure there was a couple of questions on that. All right. I think you need to know the multipliers and the fiscal policy. And any questions on these terms before I flip back and go over 42?
Can you go over how crowding out works again? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's nothing to be sorry about. We want to get these right. Right. So government spends, and this is ADSRAS. I just have trouble writing. Government spends, so AD goes to the right. But because they're in a deficit, have to borrow. This is the loanable funds. Now it'd be real interest in loanable funds. So demand for loanable funds is government spending. Government spending is going to now shift demand. All right, come on. It's going to shift demand to the right, bring interest rates up. If interest rates are up, investments down. So that's going to pull back AD here, and that's crowding out.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else on anything on these terms before I shift back to the multiple choice questions?
Can we just go over buying bonds just one more time, real quick?
Yeah. So, say like the Fed buys $1,000 bonds, and the reserve requirement is 0.1. There's $1,000. The Fed buys $1,000 worth of bonds. That all goes into the excess. So you could go, if you're seeing how much the whole money supply could increase, it's 1,000 times the multiplier, which would be 10 for 10,000.
So,
If you,
oh, sorry. Just so you wouldn't need to take any out for
no,
okay.
but if you put in $1,000 deposit, I got to take 10% out, 100. That leaves 900 in excess. So the money supply could increase by 9,000.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense now.
Okay. It's important. There's a couple of them, usually.
What's the thing that doesn't change when government spending increases by the same amount as tax increase?
No, if government spending increases by the same amount as tax increase, AD is going to change whatever to the right.
I think we had a.
What's not going to change is the deficit.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Questions, and let's see. I'll go to 40.
Can you explain like what deficit spending is?
Yeah, deficit spending, the KG, government has spent more in tax revenue, but they now have to borrow.
Okay.
All right.
So that
So,
was apply.
so all it's saying is when the government has a deficit, which is government spending is greater than tax revenue, and then they spend some more.
So what would that shift?
Well, if you had a deficit and you spent, you'd have to go borrow, so it would shift demand and loanable funds.
Okay.
All right. All right. 42. All right, let me look at my sheet so I can see it. All right. Last year, both the borrower and lender expected an inflation rate of 3% when they signed a long-term agreement with a fixed nominal rate of 5. If the actual inflation was lower than expected, all right. So it's nominal. I don't want the eraser here. So if it's nominal equals real plus inflation, right? So originally we had plus 9. So originally we had 5% here. Inflation was 3%. The real had to be 2. And the actual inflation was lower. Let's just say instead of 3, it was 2. Nominal is fixed. The real now had to be 3. Anytime real goes up, it is good for the lender. The lender would benefit because it's now getting paid back. And all that's saying is its purchasing power is increasing. So they're benefiting by low inflation, and the lender is paying back a more valuable dollar than expected. So Ryan, when you use this formula, anytime real increases, it's good for the lender. Anytime real decreases, it's bad for the lender. Obviously, if it's good for the lender, it's bad for the borrower. Okay?
Okay. So it would be B then? The lender would benefit?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Everyone does know the answers, right? Somewhat. I don't know where. In the AP review, the macro answers are there. Credit versus debit. Credit is incoming money. Debit is outgoing money.
So a surplus in the current account would be credit?
No, a surplus in the financial account would be credit because the
Okay.
financial account is capital flowing in.
Okay, thanks.
But like for one transaction, Jack, like, because that's the whole cycle. But if you're going to say US sells Japan computers, yeah, we're going to get a credit on those computers because they're going to buy them and money's going to come in.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to ask?
You said it's AP style graded, right, for this exam?
Yeah. Yeah, that one influenced you, KG. You want to get them all right.
No, I do. I'm just making sure.
Yeah. I think I said a 42 is a C.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I said a 36 is a C.
Ah,
A 42 is a B, and the 48 or above is an A.
okay.
So you need an 80% to get an A, which I would say is a 95. A 42, I think I would give like a B, which I'd say is like an 88 or an 87. And then a 36 would be like a 78.
Okay.
And then under 36. Yeah, we'll figure that out if anyone does that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? And you're only getting 30 questions tomorrow, right? Actually, I think 29 because I think it just broke out different. And then you'll get 31 the next day. Oh, 45. Huh? Right here. Which of the following represents a leakage from the circular flow? Nice. I can't read the answers there. Imports because money would leave the country. So it wouldn't like the circular flow. Yes, I am going to send you the link, Corey. The trouble is, like, it depends how fast it processes, but like, I will definitely send it out as soon as I get it. So the circular flow, KG, should be like the money, like I always say, for a dollar spent, someone earns a dollar. Well, imports hurts us because the money leaves our country and like abandons the circular flow. And that's what they mean by leakage.
Okay. And
Okay.
is 41 an example of crowding out?
The aggregate demand curve is downward sloping because of an increase in general price level. No, because it's not built on government spending.
Okay.
But you're going to have the same thing, right? Because the demand for money is going to increase, interest rates are going to go up, and investment's going to go down. The big difference here is AD didn't shift right based on government spending.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Bressler,
Yes,
there's only like one or two questions about CPI on this practice test. Would you say it's
I'd say that's probably normal then.
okay?
Yeah, I think the test will be pretty similar. Maybe a tad harder. But I drop the like if I was giving you this test, I think I'd make it like 38, 48, like 38, 44, 50. Because I think people did a lot better on this test than the test on I dropped the curve to make them equal. I guess the best way I'm saying it. Any other questions? Okay, I will be in my room at 7:45. If you guys develop any other questions tomorrow, and I will post this